Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message reads like this. Hello African Confessions, how are you? I am a South African by birth, and right now I am currently 43 years old. I started working when I was only 12 years old, since my mom and my dad, they were working in a farm, so they met in that farm when I was 12 years. That is when I started working, assisting my mom. She was a maid. My dad was from Mozambique, but I didn't love this farm work. So when I turned 19 years, that's when I decided to go and stay with my auntie. I was also staying with my cousin sister. One of my cousin sister, she was working at this other restaurant. She prepared a CV for me. Then I started to work at that restaurant. When I started working at that restaurant, I could not even speak simple English. I wanted to be successful in life. I started to attend some night schools. That is when I met this other friend of mine at this other night school where I was going. Then she told me that she was really interested in me and she wanted to help me succeed, because I had told her where my family was coming from. We were coming from a generation of people who were only working in the farms. Some of my family members, they never even had gotten out of the farms. They never had IDs or anything. All that they knew was just to work in the farms, but I had refused that kind of a life. I wanted to succeed in life. I didn't know that she was already on a mission. When I met her, I used to go with her to this certain kind of a club. When I went with her to that club, that is when I saw that these girls, they were playing with fire. As rich as they were, there were many nights that when we were drunk, they would try to contact or to make contact with their ancestors. This was quite a very dangerous game that they would play. So what they would try to do is to record you whilst your ancestors will be speaking. On one night, they made me to perform some rituals, and indeed, my ancestors started to speak. That is when my troubles began. When my ancestors started to speak, they could not stop speaking. They started to make me sick. I was supposed to be taken to a sangoma, but my dad and my mom at that time, they were fighting because my father told my mom that he was supposed to take me back to Mozambique so that the rituals can be performed and they can know what the ancestors that were speaking on me wanted to say. But my mom, she refused, and she said, I don't want my daughter to go to Mozambique. So what my mom did is that she then ran away from that farm where she was staying, and she told me that I was never supposed to contact my father again. But you know, your father is your father. Since I was already matured at that time, I just pretended as if I didn't care anymore about my father, but I used to secretly visit my dad whilst he was working at that farm. And whenever I would go and visit my dad, I would see that his life, it was no longer okay. He was now sick because he had worked on that farm, I don't know for how many years. And when he started to get sick, the guy that he was working for, he told my dad to stop coming to work. They just wanted my father to die, but they didn't want my father to die on the farm, because if my dad was going to die whilst he was still working for that guy, the man was supposed to pay my father a lot of money, because I think that my dad at that time, when I traveled with him to Mozambique, he had already worked for that guy maybe for something like 20 years. So he was supposed to be given a lot of money. But those people that own the farms, they are very heartless, because they just pretended as if they really cared for my father, and they asked my father if he was willing to stop coming to work. So my father accepted. But by the time that I tried to ask my father not to go back to Mozambique before he had been given his money, it was already too late, because he said that his boss had promised him that each and every month when he was in Mozambique, he was going to send him his full salary. that money, my brother, it was never sent to him, because at the time when my dad told me that he will be traveling to Mozambique, he asked me if I wanted to travel with my old man so that I can go and meet up with some of his relatives back in Mozambique. I could not resist. I just wanted to meet up with my blood relatives. So me and my dad, we went to Mozambique. And if I had not gone with my dad to Mozambique, maybe the rituals will never had been performed on me. From what I've been hearing from several sangomas that I've been visiting is that when I went with my dad to Mozambique, that is when the gift that had been brought upon my life by my ancestors was stolen from me, because when I arrived there in Mozambique, that is when my relatives noticed that on me there was a gift to heal people that had been brought by my ancestors. My dad died whilst I was still there in Mozambique, so I could not travel back here to South Africa before his burial. I had to wait until my father had to be buried. Soon after the burial of my father, that is when they told me that before I could travel back to South Africa, some rituals were to be performed on me. What we did is that we went to this other mountain, and once we had climbed the mountain, there was a lot of natural springs, and I was told that the mountain on which we were on, it was a forbidden mountain. They gave me some instructions to go to this other spring so that I can wash my body. When I was bathing myself, that is when I realized that I was now all alone. All of my father's relatives, they had left me behind. I tried to climb down the mountain. Since I didn't know the place as much as they knew it, I had to sleep in that mountain. It was the most scariest thing that had ever happened to me. Without any shoes, without nothing, I had to walk about 7 kilometers before I could get to the next village. I was already lost. I was walking in the wrong direction, because when I arrived at this other village, that is when I was told that the place that I was looking for, it was in the other opposite direction. So I had to start walking again in a dense forest until I had reached the village where my father's relatives were staying. When I reached that village, my father's relatives, they started to celebrate as if I had achieved something huge in my life. When I arrived at my father's place, they told me that the reason why they had left me in the mountain, they wanted to see if indeed the ancestors that had spoken through me were their ancestors. So they said that the reason why I was able to find my way back home, it was because of their ancestors. That is when they accepted me into the family. After the ritual was performed, I was given a very small calabash that was full of traditional beer. But that traditional beer, it had another smell. You know, that smell of rotten eggs. That calabash had that same smell. When the evening came, as we were sleeping, that is when I started to experience my first nightmare. The first night, I dreamt as if I was swimming in a river full of blood. My womb was just dropping down to the floor. And now, this is the problem that I have been facing ever since I visited my father's relatives in Mozambique. When I came here to South Africa, I was dating this other man. But from the very first day that me and him, we started to sleep with each other again, he started to complain that I had infected him with an STI. Me and him, we went to the clinic. But no matter how hard we tried to get rid of this infection, it never went away until he chose to dump me. After me and him had separated from each other, he died. He died a couple of weeks after he had claimed that I had infected him with an STI. This thing, it has happened to 4 men that I have dated. And these 4 men that I have dated, they have all died from the same sickness. They just start to experience some kind of an STI. Their manhood will get so swollen that I won't even understand. And when we go to the clinic, sometimes they can get an injection or some pills like antibiotics, but it seems as if it doesn't work. And it doesn't matter if I sleep with a man using protection, I still infect that man that I would have slept with. From the time that I visited my father's relative in Mozambique, 4 of the men that I have slept with, they have all died from the same sickness. Now I am even afraid to have sexual intercourse with a man because I am afraid that maybe a curse was placed on my life. I have tried to visit several traditional healers. They tell me the same thing, that when I went to Mozambique, there was a relative of mine who saw that indeed I had a gift to heal other people. So they stole that gift away from me. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was forwarded to me by one of our admins. Strange things do happen in this world. Please let us try to speak with her in the comment section.